What's up, guys? I'm Rustin from raspbian.com. How you guys doing? I'm doing well. Hopefully you guys are doing well today too. Now welcome to part 2 of our Raspberry Pi 4 cluster computer series. Now in this video, we're only going to work with one of the Pis. In part 3, we're going to finish the cluster. We're going to set up the other Pis. In part 4, we're going to test out our supercomputer to see how it performs. So in this video, we're going to install Raspbian. We're going to install a bunch of stuff. We're going to set up our Raspberry Pi. We're going to install all the things we need to install. Part 3, again, we're going to set up the rest of the Raspberry Pis, and part 4 will be the cluster test. All right, guys, so this is the website that I created. This is called Dev Unicorn. I created this website to have a place for all my tutorials, videos that I create regarding Raspberry Pi's programming. All of that stuff is going to go here. It's going to live here. It's going to live on YouTube. So originally I used to put my stuff on Raspbian, but I have a new site. It's called Dev Unicorns. All my stuff is going to go on this site now. I created a new page. This is called Raspberry Pi 4 Cluster Supercomputer. I'll leave a link to this page. This is the main page we're going to be using for this whole series. We're going to be copying a lot of the stuff from this page. Now, I added everything to this page. Now, these are the parts with all the links here. I have to fix the links, by the way. These links are not active, but by the time you guys watch the video, they should be working. So there's going to be links to all the parts. These are the software that we're going to need to install, like Raspbian, Win32 Disk Imager, all that stuff. And these are the full instructions and all the code we're going to be able to copy and paste onto our terminal. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to need to do is navigate to this page here, Raspbian. Raspbian is the OS for Raspberry Pi. We're going to download the light version here. Now it's Raspbian Buster. This is the newest version of Raspbian. Now, if you guys watch this video in the future, it might be a different name. Don't worry about it. Just download the light version. Make sure it's the light version. And, I'm sorry, this is the light version right here. And we want to download the zip. So download the zip. It should take about a minute or so to download. All right, once it's finished downloading, you're going to extract it to someplace. I'm going to extract mine to the desktop. Press OK. It's extracting the file to the desktop. It basically was zipped, so you need to extract it. So you guys have to do the same thing. Extract it to wherever you want to extract it to, but remember where you extracted it to. So that's done. Now we're going to move on to the next tab. This is Win32 Disk Imager. This program is going to allow us to burn the Raspberry Pi image onto a micro SD card. So you're going to need a micro SD card reader, and it has to be connected to your PC for this to work. So we're going to download it. Click on download. I have mine downloaded already. So once you're finished downloading Win32 Disk Imager, we're going to move on to PuTTY. Now, PuTTY is a program that allows us to remotely access our Raspberry Pis. It's a pretty cool one. I've been using it for years. So download PuTTY, find out which one you want here, download it. Once you finish downloading it, we're going to move on to the next part. We finished downloading all that stuff. We're going to open up Win32 Disk Imager. We just finished downloading it and installing it, so open it up. It should look something like this. Now, you're going to want to make sure that your micro SD card is connected to your micro SD card reader. So I just connected mine. I'm going to hit OK here. I'm going to click this. I'm going to close this. Now we want to open up, click on this folder icon here and navigate to wherever you downloaded your image. So I'm going to go to desktop. That's where I extracted mine. And I'm going to look for the image. And it should be here. Yep. This is the image, Raspbian Buster Lite. Again, if you're doing this in the future, it might be called something different. Buster is the newest version of Raspbian. As of today, tomorrow might be something else. So I'm going to click on it, click open. Then click on write. Click on yes. Now it's going to start burning the image onto the SD card. So let that do its thing. Once it's finished, we're going to come right back. All right, so it's finished burning it onto our micro SD card. We're going to click on OK. We can close this now. Now we're going to open up our file explorer here. And we're going to navigate to our drive letter. The one that says boot. It's the one we just burned. Mine's is drive G. Yours could be whatever. So just click on the one that says boot. In this directory here, this is the boot directory for Raspbian. We're going to create a new file. So we're going to right click this here, the screen, and we're going to click on New, scroll down where it says text document, click on that. Now we're gonna delete everything in here. Don't leave anything, including the .text. We don't want this to have any extension. So we're gonna type in SSH and that's it. And we're gonna type in yes. So as type, yours should be file. It shouldn't be text. So all we did was type in SSH and that's it. So this is a little trick that will allow us to enable SSH. So by default, Raspbian stopped enabling SSH. We're gonna need SSH enabled if we wanna remotely access our Raspberry Pi, which we're gonna do with PuTTY. So this is a neat trick that I learned and it helps us enable SSH. So again, by default, SSH is not enabled for security reasons. So we're gonna close this. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take out our micro SD card, connect it to our Raspberry Pi, make sure our Raspberry Pi is connected to our network, the same network we're using right now on our desktop, right? And we have to have an internet connection and power on the Raspberry Pi, and we could move on to the next step. All right, guys, so now I connected my Raspberry Pi. I have the micro SD card connected to the Raspberry Pi. I have the Raspberry Pi connected to our network using an Ethernet cable. I powered on the Raspberry Pi. Now we can move on to the next step. And the next step is to find out the IP address of our Raspberry Pi. So we can do that by opening up Terminal. So if you're using Windows, type in CMD here in search, then hit enter. This terminal window should pop up here. And we're gonna type in ping, P-I-N-G, hit space. Then we're gonna type in RASPBERRY, Pi. By default, the Raspberry Pi network name should be Raspberry Pi. So if we ping Raspberry Pi, it's gonna get, if it's on our network, it will give us back the IP address. So we're gonna hit enter, and it's working because we're getting an IP address back here. So the IP address for my Raspberry Pi is 192.168.1.17. Yours is gonna be different. Make sure you write it down. So I'm writing mine down right now, 192.168.1.17. Yours is gonna be different, so make sure you write yours down. All right, so now that we got that, we're going to close this. We're gonna open up PuTTY. Click on yes. PuTTY is the, I'm sorry, it's not PuTTY. This is PuTTY. Okay, so PuTTY is basically a lot. So what PuTTY does is allows us to remotely access our Raspberry Pi. So it's pretty neat. So right here, we're gonna type in our IP address of our Raspberry Pi. Mine says 192.168.1.17. Yours will be different, so type in yours. Hit open, click on yes. As you can see, now we're connected to our Raspberry Pi. All we need to do is type in the username and password. If we didn't add that file originally to the boot directory, this wouldn't work because by default, SSH is not enabled because of security reasons. We don't want hackers to automatically log into our Raspberry Pis by default, right? So login as is going to be Pi. Type in Pi, P-I, hit enter. Then the password is going to be Raspberry, so RASPBERRY. That's the username and password by default. So now we successfully remotely access our Raspberry Pi. So this is why we downloaded the Lite version, by the way. We don't need the graphical user interface. We only need this right here, the terminal, the core of the operating system. Now we're going to type in raspi-config. Sorry, let's just copy it from here. Sudo, I forgot to type in sudo. So I'm copying it from here. We're using the page on the left here. This is the page I created to help you guys with all the steps. And all you have to do is really copy and paste. So when I'm typing something in, you can just copy and paste it from here. So sudo space raspi-config. This opens up like the settings for the Raspberry Pi. So we can hit enter. Now the settings page opens up for our Raspberry Pi. It's called the configuration tools. All right, first thing we want to do is scroll down to advanced options. Then we want to go to the first one here where it says expand file system, hit enter. Now it basically expanded the file system. So what it's doing is, let's say you have a 8 gigabyte micro SD card. When it first installed the Raspbian on that micro SD card, you weren't using the entire 8 gig. It was only using a small portion of it. So by doing this, we're expanding the file system to use the entire 8 gig of the micro SD card. Now we're gonna go back to the first screen here. Under network options, this is number 2, network options, hit enter, or it says host name, hit enter again. By default, again, the name is gonna be Raspberry Pi. That's the network name or the host name. So we're gonna change it here. We're gonna change it to capital P, lowercase I, 01. This is gonna be Pi 01, our first Pi, our master Pi. So then we're gonna hit OK. So now we changed our Pi name. So now we're gonna hit tab. It's gonna bring us down to here. Then we're gonna make sure we highlight finished, hit enter. And that's basically it. It kicked us out of PuTTY right here because we changed some stuff around and then it rebooted. So we're gonna close this. So we're gonna open up PuTTY again. We're gonna type in our IP address. So mine is 192.168.1.17. Yours will be different. Hit enter, type in the username, which is Pi, then password is Raspberry. All right, now as you can see, we've finished this part here where it says installing Raspbian. We're finished with that. Now we're gonna move on to this portion where it says installing MPI CH. So all we really have to do is just copy these lines of code here. So I'm gonna copy it, including the sudo, paste it onto the terminal here, hit enter. And give it a couple of minutes to run. Now that that's finished, we're going to copy the second line here, sudo make directory MPI CH2. So basically what this is doing is it's making a directory called MPI CH2. Hit enter. All right, so it finished making that directory. Basically, what sudo is a Linux command that gives you higher privileges, like the highest privileges you could possibly have. So if you don't type in sudo, for some commands, it might not work. So that's why I type sudo for everything, so just make it easier for everybody. So now we're gonna move into that directory. So we're gonna copy this third line of code here. Copy it where it says cd. So we're gonna paste it onto our terminal. So what's cd? Cd is change directory. We're moving into the directory we just created here, MPI CH2. So once we hit enter, we're going to be in that directory, as you can see here now. We're in that directory. Now we're going to copy this line of code here. We're going to download something. And we're going to download MPI CH version 3.2. So paste that there, hit enter. It should take a couple minutes to download. All right, so that's finished downloading. We're going to copy this other line of code right under it, which is going to extract the file we just downloaded. All right, so that's done. We're going to create, or we're going to copy this line of code here. This is going to create a directory in the home directory called RPI MPI. So we're going to hit enter. That's done. We're going to copy this next line of code here. We're going to make another directory inside the directory we just created called MPI-install. So copy that, paste it there, hit enter. And we're going to make another directory. And I forgot to type in sudo, so I'll fix it. So before you paste this next one, type in sudo here, hit space, then paste this one here. Basically, it's making another directory called MPI build inside the Pi directory. Hit enter. So now we're going to copy this line of code here. We're going to install something called G4tran. So copy this line of code, paste it, sudo apt-get install. So apt-get install is the Linux version of getting stuff, like downloading something and installing it. So what we're installing is called G4tran. So we're going to hit enter. Give it a couple of minutes to install. If it asks you to continue, just type Y, then hit enter again. All right, now that that's done, we're going to copy the next line of code underneath it here, paste it, hit enter. This one might take like maybe 10 or 15 minutes. So if it takes a really long time, don't be scared. That's normal. All right, so that's done now. We're going to copy this next line of code, sudo make, copy it, paste it here. And basically, this one's going to take the longest because we're making everything we just installed here. So sudo make, hit enter. All right, so that's finished. Now the next step, I'm going to copy this line of code here. Copy that, sudo make install. So paste it here. The first one was very long. Now this one is also going to be long. So just hit enter, and I'll be back once it's finished. Now that that's done, we're going to copy this line of code here, which is allowing us to move to the last directory we're in, or the main directory. Now copy this line of code here, nano bash rc, paste it. This should open up a text editor, which it does. Now we're going to copy this here where it says path equals all the way up to right here where it ends with bin. Copy that. All right, so we're going to click on the terminal. We're going to hit the down arrow. We want to go all the way to the end. All right, this is a document, so we're going to go all the way to the end. Right about there, we're going to paste what we just copied, right? So now we're going to copy this instruction here. We're going to hold control, all right? Hold the control, press 6 and X together. 6X together. So on the terminal, we're going to hold control, press 6X together, then Y for yes, and enter. All right, so that's it. We just edited that file and add this line of code at the bottom of it. So now we're going to reboot. So we're going to copy this here, sudo reboot, which will reboot the Raspberry Pi. Once we reboot the Raspberry Pi, we're going to lose the network connection with PuTTY. So we're going to close this up here. We're going to open up PuTTY again. We're going to give the Raspberry Pi about like 10 or 15 seconds to reboot. Because if it's still rebooting, this won't work. So we got to give it a couple of seconds to finish rebooting. While it's rebooting, we're going to type in our IP address. So our Raspberry Pi, mine is 192.168.1.17. Type in yours. Now click open. We're going to move this up over here so you can see it better. And once it's finished rebooting, it should load up with the username prompt. Now we're going to type in the username, which is pi, hit enter. Then the password is raspberry, raspberry, hit enter. Now we're logged in. So now all we have to do is copy this line of code. All right, so copy this line of code here. And if we get our host name, that means whatever we did up to this point it's working. So copy it, paste it, hit enter, and we got our host name back. We changed it to pi01. That means whatever we did works. So that's how we were able to test it out. We're almost done with this video. We still got to do this part here. We're installing MPI for Pi. MPI is the software that's going to allow us to cluster our Raspberry Pis. It's basically one of the more popular ways to create a cluster using computers. So MPI for Pi is the Pi version of that. So we're going to install MPI for Pi. So now we're going to scroll down. We're going to copy the first line of code here. It's going to install MPI for Pi version 2.0. Paste it there, hit enter. Okay, now that's finished. We're going to copy the second line of code. The second line of code, it's basically extracting the file we just downloaded. So it's sudo tar. Tar is basically just extracting. And these are permissions. These are the type of things where we want it to do. ZXF and the file name .gz. .gz is the like Aurora file, but it's used for Linux. If you're used to like .rar or .zip, .gz it's like the Linux version of it. So we're gonna paste it here. Once we hit enter, it's gonna extract that file. Now we're gonna move to our new directory here. Copy that, paste it here, cd to MPI for Pi -2.0, hit enter. We're in that directory now, as you can see down here. I'm going to copy this line of code here where it says sudo aptitude install python.dev. So we're installing python.dev. So copy that, hit enter. Oops. What we're going to do is type in sudo apt -get, hit space, install python -dev, hit enter. Now it's going to download Python and install it. Type in y, hit enter. I have to update this line of code here. All right, so that's done. Now we're going to copy this next line of code, Python setup the Pi build. Copy that, paste it here, hit enter. Alright, so that's done. Now we're going to copy the next line of code, sudo python setup install. Oops. That's done. We're going to copy this line of code here. We're almost done, guys. We got a couple more lines of code for this video. So copy that, paste it, hit enter. Now finally, this is the final line of code for this video. So copy it, paste it. Before you hit enter, I'm going to explain to you what's going to happen. So what this is going to do is going to test out MPI, and it's going to print out our name plus hello world 5 times. If we see that, that means whatever we did up until now worked. We installed everything successfully, including MPI for Pi. So now we're going to hit enter, and as you can see, it says hello world, and it shows you the process, and then it shows our name 5 times. So our name is Pi01. That means everything we did up until this point was successful. So if you get up to this point and you're getting an error, you're going to try to start from the beginning. You might have missed one line of code here. And that's pretty much it for this video. In part 3, the next video, where we're going to finish the cluster. Everything should be ready to go. In part 4, we're going to do the benchmarks. We're going to run a bunch of different scripts to test out the power of our Raspberry Pi cluster, compare it to a regular Raspberry Pi without a cluster, comparing it to other computers to see how much performance we get out of a cluster computer. Alright guys, so that's pretty much it for this video. I'm Rustin from RosmerTech.com, and thank you guys for watching.